Doing this Sunday here, I'm reading an article from spikedonline.com. Now, this is obviously an opinion piece, and it's about Trump's executive order on getting rid of gender clinics. Anyway, I'm going to get into it now. Whenever you love or love Donald Trump, there are occasions where you have to admire his candor. The US president's latest executive order, titled Protecting Children from Chemical and Surgical Mutilation, will prevent federal agencies from supporting the gender affirming model of healthcare for minors. Across the country today, it reads, medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children under the radical and false claim that adults can change a child's sex through a series of irreversible medical interventions. This dangerous trend will be a stain on our nation's history, and it must end. Talk about getting straight to the point. Yeah, exactly. I'm so glad he's just cutting through the bullshit. One of the core tenets of faith in the woke movement is that of gender identity, the notion that we each have an innate essence of male or female. As one trans campaigner explained to me, which may be misaligned with our anatomy, um, this patently religious belief has formed the basis for medical policies throughout the Western world when it comes to children who are expressing confusion about their sex. It's not just expressing confusion about their sex. I mean, because when they're teenagers and when they're in college, they're obviously. I mean, they're obviously confused about sex, but they also want to know. But they want to know about their place in society when when they leave college and that, and they get into the real world, and just adding gender affirming clinics is just adding. You're just giving them more stress and more confusion, and that's not what they need. Um, where was I? Oh, okay. Since the publication of the CAS review by NHS England last April, the idea that there is any evident evidential basis for the prescription of puberty blockers has been discredited. Yet children around the world are still being medicalized for what is clearly a problem that requires a a therapeutic approach. Trump's executive order has specifically blamed the influence of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health for the junk science that currently prevails and has done so much harm to children and adults alike. It's not just about puberty blockers, which, given that 80% of young people and desist from feelings of gender and dysphoria through puberty, are effectively blocking the cure. Almost all young people prescribed these experimental drugs advance to cross sex hormones. In some cases, surgery follows. The Manhattan Institute found evidence that in the US between 2017 and 2023, around 6,000 girls under 18, aged under 18, underwent gender affirming double mastectomies. I think that's what it says. Although the true figure could be much higher. I reckon the figure's way higher than that. Shockingly, at least 50% of these children were 12 years old or under. Are these people just pedophiles or something? Because they really do sound like pedophiles. The idea of medical practitioners removing the healthy breasts of adolescents because of a belief in a gender soul is a kind of pseudoscientific atrocity that will bewilder and appall future historians. Yeah, it will. The future historians are going to look back on this. Yeah, when we're all going to think, yeah, what the fuck were they thinking? The fucking idiots. None of the cheerleaders for these measures can come close to justifying them in any terms other than appeals to emotional accusations that their opponents are transphobic. That's what I'm saying. They always use the argument of, oh, you're transphobic, but they can't use any scientific justification of fact. They never do. They always let their emotions do the talking. When Labour peer Jackie Smith, the UK government's spokesperson for equalities in the House of Lords, was asked last year if her government had a working definition of gender identity, she deflected. I have to say that this would be a better debate if we spent more time worrying about how we provide services and account for people's needs, and less about how we catch our political opponents out. It is hardly a gotcha to expect a government to understand the basis of its own policies, but then not even the WPATH has provided a satisfactory definition. As the world's leading authority on gender medicine, we might expect its members to at least attempt to explain why children should have puberties blocked, rather than simply expecting us to take it on faith. Indeed, as I said before in the previous video, since they pretty much take it and base it on faith, then why don't they just have their own religion, make up their own religion, and just have their own church? I don't understand why they just don't. WPATH defines gender identity as a person's intrinsic sense of being a male, female, or an alternative gender. This is the circular definition upon which this organization supposes expertise is founded. In March of last year, journalists Michael Schellenberger and Mia Hughes published the WPATH files, a scientific, surgical, and hormonal experiments on children, adolescents, and vulnerable adults. These leaked internal memos and videos revealed that leading members of WPATH were fully aware that many of their patients cannot give informed consent to the treatments they were undergoing. Examples include an in indoctrinating. Oh, I'm sorry about this. Who admits that we're often explaining these sort of things to people who haven't had biology high school yet. And see, those are see these are the type of people that they are. They're pretty much predators. You can pretty much tell because I mean this is just predatory behavior. This is. Another openly states that for many young patients, it is out of their development range to understand the extent to which some of these medical interventions are impacting them. You don't need a medical degree to know that children cannot possibly comprehend the implications of a life without fertility or sexual function. I present I presented a show on the WPATH files for GB News in March 2024. This was a necessity given that no other UK news broadcaster was prepared to even acknowledge the existence of the biggest medical scandal of the century when news broke out that staff in the office of Rachel Levine, then the Assistant and Secretary for Health at the Department of Health under the Biden administration, allegedly put pressure on WPATH and pushed for the removal of age restrictions of trans surgery. The BBC again failed to cover the story. Even then, 10 months later, the BBC has yet to mention the WPATH files at all. I'm not even surprised because even when Jimmy Savile died, um, they they still didn't do any story regarding as far as all the bullshit that he did to people for decades and decades. Now, I think ITV did a documentary about it, if I remember correctly. But I know that the BBC didn't do anything about it, and I'm not even surprised. So this part about the BBC doesn't even surprise me whatsoever. Even in the context of Trump's latest executive order, in the 24 hours after the scandal broke last March, the BBC did manage to report on news items such as University of Essex campus car honoured with statue, recycling bins shake up for Highland households, and more beavers released in national parks. So at least they were covering the important stuff. This is just one of the many examples of how the ideological capture of the BBC has prevented it from fulfilling its role as the state broadcaster. The very fact that the BBC has an identity unit and a full time gender and identity correspondent tells us all we need to know about the extent of the rot. But the same is true of the medical establishment both in the UK and in the US. Figures of the authority are now beholden to a quasi-religious religious belief system that demands conformity and has scant regard for the truth. Yeah, conformity. That and I mean that's pretty much. It's pretty much not. It's pretty much not giving you the choice. It's pretty much saying yeah, it's our way or the highway. And so it is reassuring that the White House has ordered U.S. federal agencies to rescind or amend all policies that rely on WPATH guidance, including WPATH's standards of care version 8. This would seem sensible given that these very same standards of care contain a chapter on which recommends that medical practitioners should, in some circumstances, consider medical intervention, surgical intervention, or both for individuals. I don't know what that is, so please don't ask. I freely admit my lack of expertise, but might I suggest that removing someone else's testes because they feel like um, could constitute a violation of the um, Hippocratic oath. I would also say it's also a human rights issue as well. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I would also say it's also a borderline human rights issue. Just mutilating a human person's body, whenever it's a child or not. And this type of galloping lunacy has led the NHS to officially distance itself from the guidelines set up by the WPATH, and yet as late as October 2024, Nottinghamshire's NHS Healthcare Trust was advising for a clinical psychologist who will work with children as young as 11, helping them along the gender-affirming medical pathway in line with WPATH SOC 8. As journalist John Smith has put it, it's as if the Cass review never happened. The ramifications of Trump's executive order are far-reaching. U.S. clinics that receive federal funding will be closed if they persist with the unevidenced gender-affirming model healthcare. There will also be a review of the existing literature on best practices for promoting the health of children who assert gender um, dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, or other identity based confusion within a deadline of 90 days. For all the concerted efforts to dismiss the findings of the Cass review, these will no longer be ignored. I'm so glad that the Cass review isn't being ignored because that was seriously important for that to come out. However, private clinics who make a fortune, excuse me, from these procedures will be able to proceed unabated under Trump's ruling. It is for this reason that UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting was compelled to extend the ban on puberty blockers to private providers in December, and yet these maniacal activists are still attempting to find ways to circumvent the law, with the former CEO of Mermaid Susie Green vowing to defy the ban at her at her new youth gender clinic. They just want to break the law just so they could fuck up children more and more. Well, basically just fuck up more children. And the thing is, that woman, Susie Green, did this to her own child as a birthday present, on their 16-year birthday present. Got taken to Thailand, and and had it done to them. How fucked up is that? What kind of a fucking parent is she? Trump's executive order has not eliminated the problem. It is a major blow against the medieval practices masquerading as healthcare. We no more have a gendered soul than we are possessed by demons. Of course, the fact that it is Donald Trump who has taken these much needed steps will mean that many will dismiss them as cultural irrelevancies, But when it comes to the mutilation of children, tribalist political loyalists are surely not the priority. Yeah, as I said, when Trump did his executive orders, I'm so glad. It was like Trump did more in those executive orders than than any other modern president did when you really think about it. And I mean, and unrelated. Look at the look at the deportations right now. I think this is about just over 2 weeks, and look how much work he's doing. Um. Anyway, that's it for the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.